The chief defect of Henry King was chewing little bits of string. At last he swallowed some which tied itself in ugly knots inside. Physicians of the utmost fame were called at once, but when they came, they muttered as they took their fees, "There is no cure for this disease. Henry will very soon be dead." His parents gathered round his bed, lamenting his untimely death, when Henry, with his latest breath, cried, "Oh, my friends, be ruled by me, that breakfast, dinner, lunch and tea are all the human frame requires. With that, the wretched child expires." Or there's the story of Lord Lundy, who was far too frequently moved to tears and thereby ruined his political career. Lord Lundy, from his earliest years, was far too freely moved to tears. For instance, if his mother said, "Lundy, it's time to go to bed," he bellowed like a little Turk. Or if his father, Lord Dunkirk, said, "Hi," in a commanding tone, "Hi, Lundy, leave the cat alone," Lord Lundy, letting go its tail, would raise so terrible a wail as moved his grandpapa the Duke to utter this severe rebuke, "When I, sir, was a little boy, an animal was not a toy." His father's eldest sister, who was married to a parvenu, confided to her husband, "Drat the miserable peevish brat, why don't they drown the little beast?" Suggestions which, to say the least, are not what we expect to hear from daughters of an English peer. His grandmamma, his mother's mother, who had some dignity or other, the Garter or no matter what, I can't remember all the lot, said, "Oh, that I were brisk and spry to give him that for which to cry." An empty wish, alas, for she was blind and nearly 93. The dear old butler thought, but there I really neither know nor care for what the dear old butler thought. In my opinion, butlers ought to know their place and not to play the old retainer night and day. I'm getting tired and so are you. Let's cut the poem into two. Second canto. It happened to Lord Lundy then, as happens to so many men, towards the age of 26, they shoved him into politics, in which profession he commanded the income that his rank demanded, in turn as Secretary for India, the colonies and war. But very soon his friends began to doubt if he were quite the man. For if a member rose to say, as members do from day to day, arising out of that reply, Lord Lundy would begin to cry. Hints at harmless little jobs would shake him with convulsive sobs, while as for revelations, these would simply bring him to his knees and leave him whimpering like a child. It drove his colleagues raving wild. They let him sink from post to post, from 1,500 at the most to 6, 8 and barely 6, and then to be curator of Big Ben. And finally there came a threat to oust him from the cabinet. The Duke, his aged grandsire, bore the shame till he could bear no more. He rallied his declining powers, summoned the youth to Brackley Towers, and bitterly addressed him thus: "Sir, you have disappointed us. We had intended you to be the next Prime Minister but 3. The stocks were sold, the press was squared, the middle class was quite prepared. But as it is, my language fails. Go out and govern New South Wales." With that, the aged patriot groaned and died, and gracious, how Lord Lundy cried. Well, there is the story of John, who lost an immense fortune through throwing stones. People still trickling in. John Vavasor de Quentin Jones was very fond of throwing stones at people, horses, passing trains, but especially at window panes. Like many of the upper class, he loved the sound of broken glass. It bucked him up, it made him gay, it was his chiefest form of play. But this amusement cost him dear, my listeners, as you now shall hear. John Vavasor de Quentin had an uncle who adored the lad. He often chuckled, "Wait until you see what's left you in my will." Nor were these words without import, because this uncle did a sort of something in the city which had made him fabulously rich, although his brother, John's papa, was poor, as many fathers are. He had a lot of stocks and shares, and half a street in Buenos Aires, a bank in Rio, and a line of steamers to the Argentine, and options more than I can tell, and bits of Canada as well. He even had a mortgage on the house inhabited by John. His will, the cause of all the fuss, was carefully indited thus: I do bequeath, devise and give, by execution mandative, the whole amount of what I've got. It comes to a tremendous lot, in season to devolve upon my well-beloved nephew John. And here the witnesses will sign their names upon the dotted line. As time went by, declining health transmogrified this man of wealth, and it was excellently clear that Uncle Bill's demise was near. At last, his sole idea of fun was sitting snoozling in the sun. So once, when he would take the air, they wheeled him in his patent chair. By they, I mean his nurse who came from Dorchester upon the Thame. Miss Charming was the nurse's name, to where beside a little wood a long abandoned greenhouse stood, and there he sank into a doze of senile and inept repose. But not for long his drowsy ease. A stone came whizzing through the trees and caught him smartly in the eye. He rose with an appalling cry and shrieked in agonising tones, "Oh Lord, whoever's throwing stones?" Said Miss Charming, who was standing near, "That was Master John, I fear. Go fetch my inkwell and my quill, my blotter and my famous will." Miss Charming flew as though on wings to fetch these necessary things, and Uncle William drew his pen through well-beloved John, and then proceeded in the place of same to substitute Miss Charming's name, who now resides in Portman Square and is accepted everywhere. It's these classic pieces of literature that should be taught more often in schools, isn't it?